My name is Alexandra, and I just turned 35 last month. In my family, that officially makes me the disappointing middle child who never lived up to her potential. At least that was the verdict at my father's birthday barbecue last weekend. Mom said it best, "You're 35. Still lost." Then my perfect sister Abigail smirked and announced her upcoming interview at Nexus Solutions. What she doesn't know is that I founded that company. I am the CEO reviewing her application tomorrow. Let me know where you're watching from. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever had to decide between revenge and taking the high road with family. Growing up in Wellesley, a wealthy suburb of Boston, meant living in the shadow of success. Our colonial-style house on Cliff Road stood as a testament to my father Harold's accomplishments as a senior vice president at First National Bank of Boston. My mother Eleanor maintained our home with the same precision she applied to her social calendar, garden club presidency, and her children's achievements. From the outside, we were the picture-perfect American family with 3 children spaced exactly 2 years apart. Abigail, the eldest at 37, had always been the golden child. I came second as the perpetual disappointment. Adam, the youngest at 33, completed our family as the spoiled baby who could do no wrong despite rarely trying to do anything right. Every dinner in our formal dining room turned into an interrogation about grades, extracurricular activities, and future plans. Dad would loosen his tie, sip his scotch, and begin the questioning. "Abigail, how did your calculus test go?" he would ask, already smiling with anticipation of her perfect score. 98%, Daddy. I missed one question, but Mr. Stevenson said my approach was actually more creative than the textbook answer. "That's my girl," he would beam, before turning to me with a slight downturn of his lips. "Alexandra? Your literature essay." "I got an A-, I would answer, knowing before I spoke that it wouldn't be enough. A minus? What happened to the minus part? Abigail never brings home minuses." The pattern was established early and reinforced consistently. When Abigail won first chair violin in the youth orchestra at age 12, my parents threw a party and invited the extended family. When I placed second in the regional science fair that same year, Mom said, "That's nice, dear," without looking up from planning Abigail's recital reception. I discovered computers when I was 10 years old during a school field trip to MIT. Something about the logical systems and creative problem-solving resonated deep within me. By age 12, I had taught myself basic coding from library books, spending hours on our family's clunky desktop computer in the den. Alexandra is always playing on that computer. Mom would complain to her friends over coffee. Abigail practices violin 4 hours a day and maintains straight A's. What they didn't understand was that I wasn't playing. I was building, creating, learning a language that would eventually build my future. But explaining this to parents who measured success by grades, prestigious college acceptances, and conventional career paths was impossible. In 8th grade, I created a sophisticated weather prediction algorithm for the school's science fair. It won first place and qualified for the state competition. The award ceremony was scheduled the same evening as Abigail's piano recital. 3 guesses which event my parents attended. "Your grandma will video record your little science thing," Mom said dismissively. "We can't miss Abigail performing Chopin. The director of the conservatory will be there." Grandma did record it, and she was the one who hugged me tightly afterward and whispered, "They don't see it yet, but you've got something special in you, Alexandra. Something that can't be measured by their yardstick." High school brought more of the same. While Abigail followed the prescribed path to success, joining debate team, serving as class president, and dating the captain of the lacrosse team, I founded the school's first entrepreneurship club. My parents called it a distraction from real studies, even though I maintained a 3.8 GPA. I spent weekends collecting discarded electronics from neighborhood recycling piles, fixing them and reselling them for profit. By 16, I was designing custom websites for local businesses, earning enough to buy my own laptop and start saving for college. Real businesses don't start in garages, Dad lectured when I tried to explain my growing client list. You need credentials, connections, an MBA from a top school. Look at Abigail. She's already been accepted early to Princeton and has her sights set on Harvard Law after that. Our different paths created a widening gulf between us. Abigail embraced our parents' values completely. She chose the prestigious college, made plans for law school, and dated Bradley, a suitable pre-med student from a family in our social circle. I increasingly questioned why success had to look exactly the way my parents defined it. The graduation incident marked a turning point. Despite graduating with honors and running a profitable small business, my parents focused entirely on my merely above average GPA. Princeton doesn't accept 3.8s, Dad said at my graduation dinner, as if I had personally insulted him by not achieving Abigail's 4.0. I didn't apply to Princeton, I reminded him. I'm going to Massachusetts State for computer science. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom finally broke it with a tight smile. Well, I suppose they have to accept someone. Not everyone can aim as high as your sister. I chose the state university for its cutting-edge computer science program and industry connections, not because I couldn't get in elsewhere. But explaining this to my status-conscious parents was like speaking a foreign language they refused to learn. You'll end up in some back-office IT job, turning things off and on again. Dad predicted. Such a waste of potential. Those words would echo in my mind for years to come, fueling both my determination and my distance from the family that couldn't see the path I was creating. College felt like freedom. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who spoke my language, who understood the elegance of an efficient algorithm or the beauty of clean code. I thrived in the computer science program, quickly rising to the top of my classes and catching the attention of my professors. Professor Jenkins changed everything during my sophomore year. After class one day, he asked me to stay behind, his eyes bright with interest behind wire-rimmed glasses. Miss Preston, your project on data integration systems is remarkable, he said, tapping my paper. Have you considered its commercial applications? That conversation sparked what would become my life's work. Over the next 6 months, I developed a revolutionary concept for integrating disparate data systems across platforms. When Professor Jenkins introduced me to executives from TechFusion, a mid-sized tech company looking for innovations, they offered me $75,000 for the concept. It was more money than I had ever seen. My parents, when I called them with the news, were cautiously approving for once. That's a nice starting salary, Alexandra, Dad said, missing the point completely. No, Dad, it's not a job offer. They want to buy my concept. All the more reason to stay in school and finish your degree. This proves you can get a decent position after graduation. The conversation with TechFusion's lawyers revealed something Professor Jenkins had already suspected. My concept was worth far more than their offer. Their eagerness to acquire it quickly before I understood its value told me everything. The decision to drop out and develop the idea independently caused the biggest family explosion yet. I made the mistake of announcing it during Sunday dinner at my parents' house. Absolutely not, Dad roared, his face turning crimson. No daughter of mine is becoming a college dropout. This is what those computer games have done to her, Mom added, dabbing at non-existent tears. She's throwing away her education for some internet fantasy. Abigail, home from law school for the weekend, offered her most condescending smile. Alexandra, sweetie, these tech bubbles burst all the time. You need credentials to fall back on. I know it's hard to match what I've done, but at least get your bachelor's degree. Their reaction only strengthened my resolve. When my parents threatened to cut financial support if I left school, I thanked them for their past help and moved out of my university apartment into a tiny room in a shared house with 3 other tech entrepreneurs. The first year was brutal. My initial attempt at launching the startup failed spectacularly when our prototype crashed during a demonstration for potential investors. I maxed out 2 credit cards buying equipment and paying server costs. Between coding sessions, I took shifts at a coffee shop and did freelance website work to keep the lights on. 27 investors said no. Each rejection stung, but also taught me something valuable about refining my pitch, addressing potential weaknesses, and strengthening the business model. On the 28th pitch, to Diane Miller of Vanguard Ventures, something clicked. "You're thinking too small," Diane said after I finished my presentation. "This isn't just a neat software trick. This could transform how entire industries manage information." With Diane's seed funding of $250,000, Nexus Solutions was truly born. I rented a small office in an industrial district on the outskirts of Boston and hired my first 3 employees, all brilliant programmers I had met through university connections. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A mid-sized hospital in Connecticut was struggling with integrating patient records across departments. Their IT director had heard about our integration approach through a former classmate. What began as a small consulting project evolved into our first major product implementation. Word spread through the healthcare industry. Within 18 months, we had expanded to 15 employees and moved to larger offices. Diane helped secure a venture capital funding round that allowed us to scale operations and enhance our product offerings. As the company grew, I made a strategic decision that would shape both my professional and personal life. I maintained a low public profile as the founder and CEO in the male-dominated tech industry. Being a young female CEO often meant fighting for basic respect in meetings. By keeping my role somewhat private and focusing on the product rather than my persona, I avoided some of the gender bias that might have hindered our growth. This decision had an unexpected consequence. My family, still convinced I was struggling in some entry-level tech position, never discovered the truth about my success. During infrequent calls home, I deflected questions about my career with vague references to working in tech and doing okay. It was easier than explaining that I had built a company now valued at over $30 million. The cost of success was steep in personal terms. 18-hour workdays left little time for dating or friendships outside the company. I developed insomnia that no amount of melatonin could fix. At one point, I lost 15 pounds in a month simply because I forgot to eat regular meals while working. My therapist, Dr. Winters, became one of the few people who knew both sides of my life. During our weekly sessions, she helped me manage anxiety and set healthier boundaries. "You've created an impressive company," she noted during one session, "but you're still seeking validation from people who don't understand your path. What would it mean to let go of needing their approval?" It was a question I wasn't ready to answer. Instead, I poured myself into growing Nexus Solutions. We expanded into new markets beyond healthcare, applying our integration framework to financial services and educational institutions. Industry publications began to take notice, with Tech Weekly naming us one of the top 20 enterprise solutions to watch. Through it all, I maintained my distance from family, limiting visits to major holidays and the occasional unavoidable family event. It was easier than confronting the disconnect between my actual life and their perception of it. Easier than hearing their disappointment over choices that had made me successful by any objective measure. When the invitation came for Dad's 65th birthday barbecue, my first instinct was to send a gift and make an excuse. But something Dr. Winters had said in our last session nagged at me: avoidance gives these family dynamics power over you. Perhaps it's time to engage on your own terms. I had no idea that accepting this invitation would force a reckoning I had been avoiding for years. The invitation to Dad's birthday barbecue arrived by mail, Mom's perfect penmanship on heavy cream stationery. Family gathering, it specified, underlined twice. The Preston code for mandatory attendance. I held the invitation for several minutes, debating my options before sighing and marking the date on my calendar. In the week leading up to the event, I prepared like I would for a difficult investor meeting. I selected an outfit that would pass Mom's inspection while deliberately understating my success. A casual but expensive blue sundress with minimal accessories. I rehearsed vague answers to inevitable questions about my career and personal life. I even practiced a pleasant but non-committal smile in my bathroom mirror. The morning of the barbecue dawned sunny and warm, a perfect June day. I drove my Audi to the suburbs, keeping the windows down to enjoy the breeze rather than succumbing to the anxiety building in my chest. As I turned onto Cliff Road, childhood memories flooded back. Riding bikes with neighborhood kids, walking home from the bus stop, bringing report cards home, always hoping this time would be different. I parked behind a row of luxury vehicles, noting Abigail's Mercedes SUV prominently positioned in the driveway. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed Dad's gift and headed to the backyard, bypassing the front door as the invitation had instructed. The scene was exactly as I expected. Dad at the grill in his King of Barbecue apron, a gift from Adam years ago. Mom arranging serving dishes on the patio table while directing the caterers she had hired but would later claim she didn't need. Various aunts, uncles, and cousins clustered in conversation groups across the manicured lawn. Abigail held court near the rose garden, her husband Gregory standing dutifully beside her while their children Emma and Ethan, 8 and 6, played nearby in matching outfits. She spotted me first, raising a perfectly manicured hand in a queenly wave without interrupting her conversation. "Alexandra, you made it," Dad acknowledged without looking up from the grill. His tone carried the same mild surprise it always did, as if my appearance was unexpected despite the mandatory invitation. Mom materialized beside me, eyes scanning my appearance with practiced efficiency. "You look thin. Are you eating properly? And what happened to your hair? You had such lovely long hair in high school." "Hello to you too, Mom," I replied, leaning in for the obligatory cheek kiss. "My hair is the same as last Christmas. I've worn it in a bob for 3 years now." She responded, clearly unconvinced. "Well, come say hello to everyone. Aunt Linda has been asking about you." The next hour passed in a blur of superficial conversations and probing questions thinly disguised as concern. Cousin Janet detailed her recent promotion at Boston General Hospital. Uncle Frank boasted about his son's new partnership at a law firm. Aunt Linda held my hand a beat too long while asking if I was seeing anyone special yet. "What exactly do you do now, Alexandra?" Aunt Linda asked, refilling her wine glass. "Something with computers, isn't it?" "I work in tech," I answered with practiced vagueness. "Data integration systems. Is that like IT support?" "My company has a young man who fixes our computers when they break." Such a useful skill. Before I could correct her misunderstanding, Mom appeared with a plate of canapés. "Alexandra has always been good with gadgets. Remember how she used to take apart the remote controls? We went through 3 VCRs because of her tinkering." The conversation shifted, and I retreated to help in the kitchen, my standard escape strategy at family gatherings. From this vantage point, I could observe without participating. Abigail moved through the crowd like a politician, her laugh perfectly calibrated to each conversation. Adam arrived late, as usual, making a theatrical entrance with an unnecessarily large gift and immediately becoming the center of attention. The dismissal incident happened just before cake. I had ventured back outside with a tray of drinks, trying to fulfill my daughterly duties while minimizing actual interaction. Mom cornered me near the hydrangeas, a deceptively pleasant smile on her face. "You know, Alexandra, I ran into Melissa Goldstein last week. Her daughter just had her second baby. Beautiful little girl." The implication hung in the air between us. 35 isn't too late, but the clock is ticking. I took a slow breath. "I'm focused on my career right now, Mom." "What career exactly?" "You've never been clear about what you actually do." Dad joined us, plate piled high with grilled meat. "Speaking of careers, Alexandra, are you at least making enough to cover your bills these days? Economy's tough for young people without specialized skills." The familiar burn of indignation rose in my throat. "Actually, I'm doing quite well. My company has expanded significantly this year, and our latest product release has exceeded projections by 40%. Mom and Dad exchanged a look I recognized from childhood, the one that said, "Alexandra is exaggerating again." "That's nice, dear," Mom said, patting my arm. Oh, I think Uncle Frank needs more ice. As they turned away, Uncle Frank called out from across the patio. Hey, Harold, remember when we thought the kids would all join the family country club by now? 2 out of 3 ain't bad. He laughed heartily at his own joke, oblivious to my presence nearby. Mom turned back briefly. You're 35, Alexandra. Still lost. It's time to find some direction. The words hit like a physical blow. I felt my cheeks flush with humiliation and anger, my hands trembling slightly as I set down my untouched drink. Without responding, I retreated to the kitchen under the pretense of helping with dessert, my throat tight with unspoken defenses. Through the kitchen window, I watched my family laugh and talk, a unit I had never quite fit into. I was contemplating an early exit when Mom announced it was time for cake. Dutifully, I rejoined the group as Dad prepared to blow out his candles. Just as the singing concluded, Abigail cleared her throat loudly, tapping her glass with a spoon to capture everyone's attention. Before we cut the cake, I have some exciting news to share, she announced, her smile dazzling. I've been selected for an interview at an amazing tech company called Nexus Solutions. It's a rising star in the industry, and they're considering me for a senior legal position. A chorus of congratulations erupted. Mom clasped her hands in delight. Dad beamed with pride. Various relatives offered enthusiastic approval. That's wonderful news, Abigail, Mom exclaimed. When is the interview? Next week. The CEO is personally involved in the selection process, which is a very good sign. Abigail's gaze flickered to me briefly, a hint of smugness in her expression. They're revolutionizing data integration across multiple industries. Very cutting edge. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep my expression neutral. Her description contained several significant inaccuracies about what my company actually did. But correcting her would reveal more than I was prepared to share. Why can't you find something like that, Alexandra? Mom asked, not bothering to lower her voice. Your sister has always had such good career instincts. I smiled tightly, a plan already forming in my mind. Congratulations, Abigail. Nexus Solutions is indeed an impressive company. She nodded graciously, already turning back to her admirers. I slipped away shortly afterward, citing a work deadline that couldn't wait. No one questioned my early departure or seemed particularly disappointed by it. Driving home, my thoughts raced. After years of dismissal and judgment, fate had handed me an unexpected opportunity. My sister, who had looked down on my career choices for years, was now unknowingly seeking my approval. The irony was almost too perfect. What I didn't anticipate was the text message that would arrive 3 days later, forcing me to decide what kind of person, sister, and leader I truly wanted to be. The text message arrived while I was in a budget meeting with my finance team. My phone vibrated against the conference table, and I glanced down to see Abigail's name on the screen. We rarely communicated directly, usually relaying necessary information through Mom, so her name alone was enough to make me excuse myself temporarily from the meeting. Alexandra, I need a favor. The message read. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? It's about my Nexus interview. I could use some tech industry insight. I stared at the phone, a complex mix of emotions swirling through me. Shock at the unexpected outreach. Amusement at the irony. Confusion about how to proceed without revealing my position. After careful consideration, I replied, sure. Copper Lane Cafe, 2 p.m.? It was a neutral location, far from my office, but conveniently upscale enough to make Abigail comfortable. Perfect. Thanks, came the immediate response, followed by a smiley face emoji that seemed oddly out of character for my typically formal sister. The next day, I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early, selecting a corner table that offered both privacy and a clear view of the entrance. I dressed down in jeans and a simple blouse, my standard day-off attire that wouldn't hint at my executive status. Abigail arrived precisely on time, looking immaculate in a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek chignon, her makeup flawless. Yet as she approached the table, I noticed something unfamiliar in her expression: uncertainty. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, setting down her designer handbag and signaling to the barista. "Non-fat latte, extra hot," she ordered before turning back to me. "How have you been?" "Fine," I replied, surprised by the small talk. Our interactions were usually limited to obligatory family event exchanges. "How are Gregory and the kids?" "Good, good. Emma just started piano lessons. Ethan is in an advanced reading program." She nodded absently, her fingers tapping against the table. When her coffee arrived, she took a small sip and then looked at me directly. "Look, I know we don't do this, the sister bonding thing. But I really need some help with this interview." The admission clearly cost her something in pride. Abigail rarely admitted needing help with anything. I kept my expression neutral, genuinely curious about what would come next. "What kind of help are you looking for?" She leaned forward, lowering her voice slightly. "You work in tech. You must know something about Nexus Solutions and how these companies operate. The culture, the jargon, what they're looking for. I need an edge." I took a slow sip of my tea, considering my response carefully. "What position are you interviewing for?" "Vice President of Legal Affairs." She straightened her shoulders, confidence returning. It would be a significant step up from my last position. This was news. "Last position? I thought you were still at Harrington and Black." A flash of discomfort crossed her face. "That's actually part of why this opportunity is so important. I left Harrington 2 months ago." "Left or? If you must know, there were layoffs. Budget cuts. I was among the attorneys let go." The admission clearly pained her. "I haven't told Mom and Dad yet. They think I'm taking time off to focus on the children." This was unexpected. Abigail had always been the family success story, the one whose career trajectory moved ever upward. Seeing her vulnerable shifted something in our dynamic. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. She waved dismissively, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "It's fine. This Nexus position would actually be perfect. Better salary, more prestige, cutting-edge industry." She paused, then added with uncharacteristic honesty, "We need this, Alexandra. Gregory's architectural firm lost 2 major projects last year. We've been keeping up appearances, but financially, it's been challenging." The image of my perpetually perfect sister struggling financially was difficult to reconcile. "What happens if you don't get this job?" Abigail stared into her coffee. "We might have to sell the house. Move to a smaller place in a different neighborhood. Pull the kids from Westfield Academy." Her voice dropped further. "And I'd have to tell Mom and Dad that their golden child failed." I felt an unexpected pang of empathy. Despite our differences, I understood the weight of parental expectations. "Let me see your resume," I said, extending my hand. She passed over a meticulously formatted document. I reviewed it carefully, my heart sinking as I did. Abigail had impressive credentials, a solid record at a respectable law firm, and experience with corporate clients. What she didn't have was any background in technology law, intellectual property, or the specific regulatory challenges facing companies like mine. The VP position she was targeting required specialized knowledge she simply didn't possess. I looked up to find her watching me expectantly. "Well, how does it look?" "You have a strong general legal background," I began diplomatically. "But tech companies, especially ones like Nexus, typically look for specialized experience in their industry." "Have you worked with technology clients before?" "Not specifically, but legal principles are transferable. I'm a quick study." Her confidence seemed forced now. I proceeded to ask her some basic questions about data privacy regulations, intellectual property in software development, and international compliance issues. Her answers revealed significant knowledge gaps that would be immediately apparent to any interviewer. "Abigail," I said gently, "the VP of Legal Affairs position might be a stretch given your background. Does Nexus have other legal positions available? Perhaps a senior counsel role that could be a stepping stone?" Her expression hardened. "I'm not interested in a demotion. I was on partner track at Harrington. I can't go backward. It wouldn't be a demotion if you've never worked in the tech sector." It would be a lateral move into a new specialty area. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, she snapped, then immediately composed herself. I'm sorry. That was uncalled for. But this has to work out. We're counting on it. For the next hour, I gave her as much honest guidance as I could without revealing my connection to Nexus. I explained tech company culture, suggested resources for learning industry terminology, and coached her through potential interview questions. Throughout our conversation, I was struck by her determination despite the obvious mismatch between her qualifications and aspirations. As we wrapped up, Abigail gathered her things and gave me a considering look. You know more about this than I expected. Your job must be more substantial than Mom and Dad think. I shrugged noncommittally. People often underestimate what they don't understand. She nodded slowly. Thank you for helping me. I know we haven't always been close. That's an understatement, I replied with a small smile. Well, regardless. I appreciate it. She stood to leave, then hesitated. When I get this job, perhaps we could do this more often. Professional women supporting each other and all that. The irony was almost too much. Sure, Abigail. Good luck with the interview. After she left, I remained at the table, turning our conversation over in my mind. The sister who had looked down on my career choices for years was now desperately trying to enter my industry, unaware that her fate rested partly in my hands. The perfect narrative arc for revenge was laid out before me. Yet instead of satisfaction, I felt a growing unease. The decision I faced wasn't just about Abigail, or even our complicated family history. It was about the company I had built, the values we espoused, and the kind of leader I wanted to be. Walking back to my office, I knew I had some serious thinking to do before interview day. Back at Nexus headquarters, I went straight to HR and requested Abigail's complete application file. Megan, our HR director, raised an eyebrow but asked no questions as she pulled up the digital folder. The Preston application for VP Legal Affairs, she confirmed, transferring the files to my secure system. She's scheduled for the full panel interview next Tuesday, with your final meeting at 2:30 p.m. Do you want me to make any changes to the standard process? I shook my head. No changes. Standard evaluation criteria. And Megan, please don't mention my connection to the candidate to anyone on the interview panel. Alone in my office, I reviewed Abigail's materials objectively, separating the sister from the candidate. Her application was impressive on paper. Top law school, 8 years at a respected firm, leadership experience, glowing recommendations. But as I had suspected during our coffee meeting, she lacked the specialized knowledge and experience we typically required for an executive legal position. I called Jonathan, our current head of legal, to discuss departmental needs without mentioning Abigail specifically. We need someone who can hit the ground running, he emphasized. With the European expansion and the new healthcare privacy regulations, there's no time for extensive training. Whoever fills this role needs to bring expertise from day one. After hanging up, I leaned back in my chair and faced the core question. Could Abigail actually succeed in this role? The honest answer was no. She would struggle immediately and likely fail spectacularly, damaging both her career and potentially our company in the process. I considered creating a special position for her, something that would utilize her general legal background while allowing her to learn the industry. But that would mean rejecting better qualified candidates for the VP role, candidates who had earned consideration through relevant experience and expertise. It would violate our company's commitment to meritocracy and fairness. The professional decision was clear. The personal implications were anything but. That evening in my apartment overlooking the Charles River, I poured a glass of wine and truly confronted the emotional aspects of the situation. Childhood memories surfaced unbidden. Abigail receiving praise for achievements I never heard for accomplishments that were objectively more impressive. The subtle and not-so-subtle comparisons that always left me wanting. The dismissive attitudes that continued to this day. I could reject her application with a clear professional conscience. I could even arrange for someone else to deliver the news, avoiding direct confrontation. Part of me, The wounded child who had never measured up in my parents' eyes found the scenario satisfying. Let Abigail feel inadequate for once. Yet another part recognized this thinking as petty and beneath the person I had worked to become. Revenge might offer momentary satisfaction, but it wouldn't heal old wounds or create anything positive moving forward. I opened my journal and began writing, attempting to untangle my thoughts. The question isn't what Abigail deserves. I wrote, it's about who I want to be in this situation. What values do I want to uphold? How can I honor both my professional responsibilities and my personal integrity? Around midnight, I called Diane Miller, my original investor and mentor, now a trusted friend. I couldn't share the specific family connection, but I outlined the general dilemma. I have a candidate who's connected to someone I know personally, I explained. They're unqualified for the position they're seeking, but there are complicated personal dynamics involved. Diane's response was measured and wise, as always. Alexandra, one of your greatest strengths as a leader has been your ability to make tough decisions with both intelligence and humanity. You've never confused kindness with weakness or professionalism with coldness. Trust yourself to find the balance here too. But what's the right answer? I pressed. If there were a simple right answer, it wouldn't be a dilemma, she pointed out. But ask yourself this. In 5 years, looking back, which decision would make you proud of how you handled this moment? After we hung up, I stood by the window watching the city lights reflect on the river. Diane was right. This wasn't about finding a perfect solution that would make everyone happy. Such a solution didn't exist. It was about making a decision I could live with. One that honored both my professional responsibilities and my personal values. I spent the next morning examining our company structure, identifying positions that might better match Abigail's actual qualifications. There was an opening for a mid-level corporate counsel position that wouldn't require specialized knowledge immediately, but would offer a path to growth. The salary would be lower than the VP role, but still substantial and comparable to her previous compensation. Next, I created a fair testing process for all VP candidates, including Abigail. The evaluation would be objective, based on specific knowledge and skills required for the position. If by some miracle she outperformed the other candidates, I would reconsider. But I wouldn't lower our standards or create an exception based on family connection. Finally, I had to decide when and how to reveal my identity. Allowing Abigail to discover I was CEO during the initial interview would be unnecessarily theatrical and potentially humiliating for her. But conducting the entire process without disclosure would be dishonest and manipulative. The answer came to me as dawn broke over the city. I would meet with her personally after the preliminary interviews, reveal my position, and have an honest conversation about her qualifications and options. It would be uncomfortable for both of us, but it was the most straightforward approach. As I showered and prepared for work, I felt a strange sense of calm replacing the turmoil of the previous day. The path forward wasn't perfect, but it was one I could follow with integrity. Whatever happened next, I would face it as the leader I had become, not the insecure daughter I had once been. Interview day dawned clear and bright. I woke earlier than usual, my typical morning routine altered by the significance of what lay ahead. Instead of my regular workout clothes, I selected a tailored navy suit and pearl earrings. My standard CEO attire for important meetings. After a quick breakfast of toast and coffee, I headed to the office well before my usual arrival time. Katie, my executive assistant, was already at her desk when I arrived. I had briefed her yesterday about the unusual situation without sharing all the personal details. "Morning, Alexandra," she greeted me. "The Preston candidate's file is on your desk, and I've arranged for the observation room to be available during her initial interviews. The panel knows you'll be monitoring several candidates today as part of the executive selection process." "Thanks, Katie. Has the interview schedule been finalized?" "Yes, MS. Preston will meet with HR at 9, the legal team at 10:30, and then break for lunch. Your meeting is scheduled for 2:30 this afternoon in the executive conference room." I nodded, grateful for Katie's efficiency. Please make sure the legal team's feedback is on my desk immediately after their session. And Katie, when Ms. Preston arrives for our meeting, please give us 5 minutes before announcing me. Understood. Katie's expression remained professional, though I caught a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. In my office, I reviewed all the VP candidates' materials one final time. There were 3 other applicants besides Abigail, each with impressive credentials and relevant experience. 2 had backgrounds in technology law, and 1 had specialized in healthcare privacy regulations, a growing area of importance for our business. By any objective measure, all 3 were better qualified than my sister. At precisely 9 o'clock, I made my way to the observation room adjacent to our main interview space. Through the one-way glass, I watched as Megan from HR greeted Abigail, who had arrived 10 minutes early. My sister looked impeccable in a conservative gray suit, her posture confident as she shook Megan's hand. From my hidden vantage point, I could observe without being seen, noting how Abigail employed the same charm she had used at family gatherings, leaning forward slightly to indicate interest, smiling at precisely the right moments. The initial interview progressed predictably. Abigail handled the standard questions about her background and experience with polished responses that emphasized her accomplishments while glossing over her lack of tech industry knowledge. When Megan probed about specific experience with data privacy regulations, Abigail pivoted smoothly to discussing general corporate compliance work. More telling was her interaction with the administrative assistant who brought water during a brief break. While unfailingly polite to Megan, Abigail barely acknowledged the assistant, her smile disappearing the moment she thought only service staff were present. It was a small thing, but it revealed character in a way rehearsed answers couldn't. The legal team interview at 10:30 proved more challenging for her. Jonathan and his senior attorneys asked detailed technical questions that couldn't be answered with generalities. I watched Abigail's confident facade crack slightly as she struggled with queries about GDPR compliance for data processing systems and intellectual property protection for algorithmic innovations. By lunch, the pattern was clear. Abigail presented well and had strong general legal skills, but lacked the specialized knowledge needed for the executive position. The preliminary feedback forms from both HR and the legal team confirmed my assessment. While they found her impressive in many ways, none recommended her for the VP role. I returned to my office to prepare for our meeting, reviewing my notes and organizing my thoughts. The professional evaluation was straightforward. The personal conversation would be anything but. At 2:25, Katie's voice came through the intercom. Ms. Preston has arrived for her 2:30 appointment. Please show her to the executive conference room and offer her water or coffee. Let her know the CEO will join her shortly. Yes, Alexandra. I gave Abigail 5 minutes to settle in, then gathered my notes and headed to the conference room. Through the glass wall, I could see her sitting perfectly straight in one of the leather chairs, reviewing notes on her tablet. She looked up expectantly as the door opened, her expression shifting from professional anticipation to confusion to shock as she registered my presence. Alexandra? The single word carried disbelief, confusion, and the beginning of understanding. Hello, Abigail. I closed the door behind me and moved to the head of the table. Thank you for coming in today. She stared at me, processing the implications of my presence. You work here? Yes, I confirmed, meeting her gaze steadily. I'm the CEO of Nexus Solutions. I founded the company 8 years ago. The color drained from her face, followed quickly by a flush of anger. You work here? You work here. Her emphasis carried years of dismissal. All this time when the family thought you were just. And you never said anything? I built this company from nothing, I replied calmly. And yes, I chose not to share that with the family. This is why you agreed to help me prepare, she accused, her voice rising slightly. You knew I was interviewing at your company. Was this amusing for you? Watching me ask for advice without knowing who you really are. That's not fair, Abigail. I gave you honest guidance based on what you told me. I didn't mislead you about the position or the qualifications needed. But you didn't tell me you were the CEO. the person who would decide my fate. She leaned forward, hands flat on the table. Was this your plan all along? To humiliate me? Revenge for all those family dinners? The accusation stung. Partly because a small voice inside me acknowledged the grain of truth it contained. No, Abigail. This isn't about revenge. It's about making the right professional decision for this company and, honestly, for you too. What does that mean? Her voice had taken on a dangerous edge. I took a deep breath and delivered the assessment as gently but honestly as possible. Based on your interviews today and your background, you're not qualified for the VP of Legal Affairs position. You have excellent general legal skills, but this role requires specialized knowledge and experience in technology law that you don't currently possess. Abigail's expression hardened, but I continued before she could interrupt. However, we do have an opening for a senior corporate counsel position that would be a better match for your current skills. It would allow you to learn the industry while contributing immediately in areas where your experience is relevant. A demotion. Her voice was flat. You're offering me a demotion before I even had the job. It's not a demotion from your previous position, I corrected gently. It's a lateral move into a new industry. The compensation is comparable to what you were making at Harrington, with significant growth potential as you develop expertise in our field. She laughed bitterly. This is perfect, isn't it? Finally, Alexandra gets to be the successful one. The one with power. The one making judgments. This isn't about our family dynamic, Abigail. If you weren't my sister, you still wouldn't be qualified for the VP position. I'm offering you the counsel role because you are qualified for that, and because I believe you could excel in it with time. She fell silent, staring at me with an unreadable expression. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost its sharp edge, replaced by something more vulnerable. Do you have any idea what it will mean to go home and tell Mom and Dad that I didn't get the executive position? That I was offered something more suitable instead? After a lifetime of being their perfect child. The question hit closer to home than she knew. I have some idea, yes. No, you don't, she insisted. You were always the rebel. The one who didn't follow their path. When you disappointed them, it just confirmed what they already thought. But I've never failed in their eyes. Never. And now you're afraid they'll look at you differently. I finished for her. That the golden child might tarnish a little. She didn't deny it. We're about to lose the house, Alexandra. Gregory's business is struggling. The kids' school tuition is due next month. This job was supposed to fix everything. The counsel position would still help with those issues, I pointed out. The salary is substantial, but not what I told Gregory I'd be making. Not enough to fix everything at once. She looked down at her perfectly manicured hands. Do you know what Dad said about you at dinner last month? After you left the barbecue early. I braced myself. I can imagine. He said, at least Alexandra knows her limitations. She's found her level and seems content with mediocrity. Mom nodded and added, some people aren't meant for greatness. It would be cruel to expect it from her. The words hurt, even now. Even with all I had accomplished. And that's how they've always seen me, I acknowledged. The underachiever. The disappointment. While I was the success story. The one who proved their parenting methods worked. Abigail's laugh held no humor. What a joke. The failure is secretly a CEO, and the success story is begging for a job. The raw honesty of the moment stripped away years of pretense between us. For perhaps the first time, we were seeing each other clearly, without the distorting lens of family mythology. I need this, Alexandra, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Not just the money. I need to not fail. Not now. Not like this. I understood her fear. Despite our differences, we had both been shaped by the same parental expectations, the same pressure to succeed on terms we hadn't chosen. But understanding didn't change the professional reality. I can offer you the counsel position, I said firmly. It's a good opportunity with real potential. What I can't do is put you in a role you're not qualified for, where you would likely fail and damage both your career and potentially our company. The The silence stretched between us, heavy with years of competition and misunderstanding. The decision point had arrived, for both of us. What happened next would define not just Abigail's career prospects, but our relationship moving forward and my own identity as both a sister and a leader. The senior corporate counsel position, Abigail finally said, her voice carefully controlled. What exactly would that entail? I recognized this tone. It was Abigail in negotiation mode. The same voice she used when convincing Dad to increase her allowance in high school or persuading Mom to extend her curfew. She wasn't accepting defeat. She was assessing alternatives. You'd handle our standard corporate legal matters, contracts, employment issues, basic compliance, I explained. You'd work under Jonathan Barnes, our general counsel, with a team of 3 junior attorneys reporting to you. As you develop expertise in technology law and our specific industry regulations, your responsibilities would expand accordingly. And the compensation? Direct, businesslike. Base salary of $140,000, with performance bonuses that could add 20 to 30% annually. Full benefits package including premium healthcare coverage, matching 401k, stock options after 1 year. I slid a document across the table outlining the details. Frankly, it's an excellent offer for someone transitioning industries. She scanned the paper, her expression giving nothing away. And if I decline? Then we part ways professionally. And I wish you luck in your job search. I kept my voice even. The offer is based on your qualifications, Abigail, not our relationship. I won't create a position you can't succeed in just because you're my sister. But you'd give me this position because I'm your sister, she countered. No. I'd interview you for this position because our connection brought you to my attention. I'd hire you because your general legal background qualifies you for it. The familial relationship is neither an advantage nor a disadvantage at this point. She considered this, then asked the question I had been expecting. And what happens when people find out? When the staff learns the CEO's sister works here, they'll know from day one. Complete transparency. You'll be evaluated on your performance like any other employee. No special treatment. Positive or negative. Abigail fell silent again, weighing her options. I could almost see the calculations happening behind her eyes, the pros and cons being tallied with the precision that had made her an effective attorney. 6-month probationary period, she finally said. If I perform well, we discuss advancement opportunities. I want that in writing. Standard practice for all new hires, I confirmed. Your performance reviews would determine advancement timeline, just like everyone else. She nodded slowly. I'll need 24 hours to consider the offer. Of course. HR will prepare the formal offer letter for your review. I stood, extending my hand professionally. For what it's worth. I think you could excel in this role if you approach it with the right mindset. She hesitated before taking my hand. This isn't how I expected today to go. I know. But sometimes the unexpected path leads somewhere better than the one we planned. Save the fortune cookie wisdom, she replied, but there was less bite in her tone than earlier. I'll call you tomorrow with my decision. After Abigail left, I remained in the conference room, processing the conversation. It had gone better than my worst fears, but not as smoothly as I might have hoped. The next challenge would be the inevitable family fallout once our parents learned about my position and Abigail's new role. That reckoning came sooner than expected. The following evening, after Abigail had formally accepted the counsel position, my phone lit up with a text from Mom, family dinner. Tomorrow, 7 p.m., non-negotiable. I arrived at my parents' house exactly on time, dressed in a simple but obviously expensive black dress, projecting the confidence of the CEO I was rather than the perpetual disappointment they expected. Abigail's car was already in the driveway, parked beside Dad's BMW. Mom opened the door before I could ring the bell. Alexandra, come in. We've already started drinks in the living room. The tension was palpable as I entered. Dad stood by the fireplace, scotch in hand, his expression unreadable. Abigail sat perched on the edge of the sofa, looking uncharacteristically uncomfortable. No sign of Gregory or the children. This was to be a focused confrontation. "Would you care to explain," Dad began without preamble, "why you never mentioned being the founder and CEO of a multimillion-dollar technology company?" I accepted the glass of wine Mom silently offered and took a deliberate sip before answering. "Would you have believed me if I had?" The question hung in the air. Challenging years of dismissal and low expectations. "That's hardly the point," Mom interjected. "Families share important information. Successes should be celebrated together." "Like mine were?" I asked quietly. Dad's brow furrowed. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means that my accomplishments were never considered worth celebrating. My path was never deemed valid or valuable. So eventually, I stopped sharing." "That's simply not true," Mom protested. "We've always supported all our children's endeavors." Abigail, surprisingly, was the one who contradicted her. "Mom, that's not entirely accurate. Alexandra's choices were always questioned, while mine were automatically approved." The unexpected alliance momentarily silenced our parents. I used the opportunity to establish the new reality. I founded Nexus Solutions 8 years ago. We now employ over 120 people and generated $42 million in revenue last year. I've offered Abigail a position as senior corporate counsel based on her qualifications, which she has accepted. We'll be colleagues as well as sisters moving forward. "You offered her a lower position than she applied for," Dad pointed out, his tone accusatory. "I offered her a position matching her qualifications," I corrected firmly. "The VP role requires specialized experience she doesn't have yet. The counsel position offers an excellent salary and advancement opportunities as she develops expertise in our industry." "Always the pragmatist," Mom said with a tight smile. "I suppose your unconventional thinking finally paid off. All those hours tinkering with computers instead of focusing on proper studies." I recognized the attempt to rewrite history, to retroactively claim they had supported my path all along. My tinkering built a company valued at over $60 million. My unconventional thinking created jobs and innovations that have improved healthcare information systems across the country. "Well," Dad said, swirling his scotch, "I always said you had potential if you applied yourself properly." The audacity of the statement might have angered me once. Now it simply confirmed what I already knew about my parents' inability to acknowledge their misjudgment. They would never admit they had been wrong about me, just as they would never fully acknowledge Abigail's current struggles. "I think what Alexandra has built is impressive," Abigail said, surprising me again. "And I'm grateful for the opportunity to join her company, even if it's not the position I initially hoped for." The next 2 hours brought a gradual recalibration of family dynamics. Mom attempted to take credit for pushing me to excellence. Dad expressed belated pride in my business acumen, though he couldn't resist suggesting improvements to our operating model. Both treated my success as if they had anticipated it all along, rather than consistently predicted my failure. I let them maintain their illusions. The truth was evident in the subtle shift in how they addressed me, the new deference in their questions, the way Dad actually listened when I spoke about business strategy. No verbal acknowledgement could have been more telling than these behavioral changes. As for Abigail, our professional relationship began cautiously the following Monday. I made a point of treating her exactly like any other new hire, neither favoring nor disadvantaging her because of our relationship. She, in turn, approached the counsel position with surprising humility, working diligently to learn the specialized aspects of technology law. The first months weren't without challenges. Occasionally, Abigail would slip into old patterns, expecting special consideration or attempting to leverage our relationship. Each time, I maintained clear, professional boundaries. Gradually, she earned the respect of her colleagues through her own efforts rather than her connection to me. 6 months after joining Nexus, Abigail invited me to dinner, just the two of us. We met at a quiet restaurant downtown, far from both the office and our parents' neighborhood. "I never thanked you properly," she said after we had ordered. "For the job, yes, but more importantly, for not giving me the job I thought I wanted. You've proven yourself more than capable, I acknowledged. Jonathan's last review was quite positive. That's not what I mean. She set down her fork. If you had given me the VP position, I would have failed spectacularly. We both know that. Instead, you gave me the chance to succeed on my own merits, to build something real rather than maintain an illusion. The conversation marked a turning point in our relationship. Not instant closeness, but a growing mutual respect that had never existed before. The holiday gathering that December reflected our new reality. I arrived not as the disappointing middle child, but as Alexandra Preston, successful CEO. The family dynamic had shifted permanently. Mom still made occasional comments about my personal life, particularly my continued single status, but they lacked the dismissive edge of previous years. Dad sought my opinion on investment opportunities, a tacit acknowledgement of my financial acumen. Adam, perpetually self-absorbed, seemed vaguely discomfited by the new hierarchy, finding himself now at the bottom of the parental approval rankings. Most significantly, Abigail and I found ourselves allied for the first time in our lives. During a quiet moment in the kitchen, away from the family commotion, she confessed, "I always thought you were trying to embarrass the family with your nonconformity. I never considered you might simply be brave enough to follow your own path. And I always thought you were naturally aligned with their values," I admitted. "I never considered you might be conforming out of fear rather than genuine agreement." The conversation with Mom that I had both dreaded and longed for finally happened after New Year's. She called unexpectedly one evening, asking to meet for lunch. "I may not have always understood your choices, Alexandra," she said carefully over salads at her favorite bistro. Perhaps I was too quick to judge paths different from what I knew. It wasn't quite an apology, but from Eleanor Preston, it was unprecedented. "Thank you for saying that, Mom. Your father would never admit it, but he's quite proud of what you've built. As am I." She paused, then added with characteristic qualification, "Though I still think you work too much and should consider settling down soon." I smiled, accepting both the compliment and the criticism as progress. "One step at a time, Mom." By the 1-year mark of Abigail joining Nexus, both our professional and personal relationships had evolved considerably. She had earned a modest promotion on merit, having developed genuine expertise in key areas of technology law. Our sibling relationship, while not without occasional tensions, had matured into something more authentic than the competition and resentment that had characterized our earlier years. The most profound change, however, was internal. I no longer measured my worth through my parents' estimation or in comparison to my siblings. Success, I had learned, wasn't about winning family approval or proving others wrong. It was about building something meaningful on my own terms, creating value that aligned with my own values. The journey from family scapegoat to respected CEO had taught me that true validation comes not from external approval, but from internal alignment between one's actions and values. My parents' limited perspective no longer defined me, just as their approval no longer determined Abigail's sense of self-worth. We each had to find our own definitions of success, walking paths that might look very different but could lead to equally valid destinations. Sometimes the greatest achievement isn't rising to others' expectations, but having the courage to set your own. Have you ever had to decide between revenge and compassion with someone who underestimated you? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey of family dynamics, success on your own terms, and finding peace with difficult relationships resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with others who might need this message today. Thank you for joining me for this chapter of my story, and remember, the most powerful validation comes from living authentically, not from proving others wrong.